Of course, you should always be trying and testing new things. You should be looking into the ideas that others are seeing success with. You should be following some of the trends, but then taking that time and saying, did this serve us in the way that we need it to? Yes or no. If the answer is no, being unafraid to say, let's try something different.
Oh, yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Oh, yeah, the button's pressed. I'm excited. Here we go. We're launching on this thing. And guess what? Our guest is back. She is back. And if you're curious to get the background, the last name's a little different, but it's the same person, I promise you. Episode 111. 111. That's a cool number. But guess what? That was back in 2019. So we're going to check in with this guest, who, by the way, just had a birthday. And we're going to learn some things and we're going to smash some things. I can't wait to introduce you to her. Who is she? Who is she? Well, she is a marketing leader and thought leader, a community whisperer, digital health strategist in terms of marketing, demand gen focused. Like, let's go. Over a decade, at least a decade. I want to say how many decades of experience building and scaling successful businesses. She's obsessed with Agile. We've talked about it before in the past. Great episode. Go check that out. She's been a part of the Forbes Communications Council. She is the one to watch. Senior Vice President of Marketing at CipherHealth, Alyssa Higgins. Welcome back.
Hey, Casey, thanks for having me back. I'm excited to smash some myths and have a great conversation.
Heck yeah, let's do this. I'm going to pass you this thing, but you are tough. So I needn't say more. Here you go. Ugh. Okay. Go ahead. Grab Thor's hammer. You got it? Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, that was great. Great. Okay. Listen, take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people feel the need to have a lot of B2B tech to be successful in marketing, but that's a myth. The reality is, I'm guessing most of your tech stack is not actually driving tangible ROI, and most of it might even be vaporware.
Dang. Shots fired. What's going on? Can you even say that? Boom, smash. What's going on? Most of our software is probably vaporware. What's happening?
I think there's some really good tech out there, but I think to be successful, it's probably better if you scale it back. A lot of those promised features are not really coming to fruition. They're likely not working for your unique needs or the personas that you're trying to target, especially with all the noise out there today. A lot of shiny new whistles promise this is going to make everything better. You're going to get exactly who you want to target. Your spend's going to be more effective. When in reality, if you take that spend out from the tech side and re-put it into programs or even people, you might see a lot more success than you are today.
Ooh, programs or people. What are your least favorite apps? Just kidding. But like, where do people misplace? Are there any categories that tend to get abused the most, or what kind of things are you seeing out there with the vaporware?
I think a lot of people, myself included, sometimes you get really sucked into the shiny new object, right? So
Yeah.
when you think about B2B tech, even just over the last, 10, 15, 20 years, when you start to peel back the layer of that onion, what's really remained and what's changed and who are the winners and losers? So when you start with inbound marketing, for example, that was the shiny new concept over a decade ago. And it was, if you're not doing inbound, you're not going to be successful, which I think is still true today. And how you go about it needs to even be more thoughtful and curated. But then you have more systems that have come up with account based marketing, or everything is AI these days. And not all of those are really serving the true needs of your business, or even more importantly, the needs of your customers and who you're trying to
Mhm.
reach out to and engage with.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like whenever you hear something talked about too much, I tend to have this sort of natural response. Like I had this to New Kids on the Block, everyone was like, "Hey, they're the best, they're the absolute best. They're losing their minds." So then naturally I was like suspicious of them, you know? So I guess we kind of need to have that, right? With marketing, just to be careful. What's the latest thing now these days?
I think the latest thing that you see a lot of is it really is, I think, in B2B, especially as account-based marketing, really does come up a lot. Or you're also now seeing the rise of AI SDRs and outbound as well. And I think there's a few different layers to the way that these companies are approaching how to be successful. But where I think a lot of people fall short is it can be great to feel like you're doing a lot of activity, but is that really driving revenue at the end of the day? Not just engagement, which of course you need that funnel to go down to towards revenue, but if you're not measuring that success over time and going back and revisiting what is that hard ROI, ultimately
Yeah.
you're probably wasting a lot. You're wasting a lot of time too, not just the money that goes into renewing those subscriptions every year, but the time that it takes to make them successful.
Yeah, the idea of such a good point that the activity and even having a lot of software, it feels good. It feels like you're doing things. Oh, we're busy. We're really busy. But it's almost like that. It's like the empty calorie or whatever, like eating like processed food or, it's just you're like it feels good at the moment and then just nothing but regret later and it until it catches up to you. And your boss's boss are asking, where's the ROI? And you're like, well, we got this really cool thing over here.
Right.
They're like, "Yeah, yeah, that's not it, man. I'm so over it."
Hey, we launched this new software in the last year. Look at all the shiny things that we're doing.
Yeah.
You really need to go back, within 6 months or a year and be able to tie it back to was their pipeline generated? And then did that pipeline convert? And of course, especially if you're an enterprise B2B SaaS, that sales cycle can be very long and it's really complex. And so measuring and being hard on the outcome is even more important because you may be missing out on opportunities that are more meaningful to your buyers, more meaningful to your market that is being sucked up by your tech spend.
This is like real talk. It's so refreshing. This is like the whole reason I do this show is to just like, let's get rid of the BS. Let's just what's the real deal? So, where do you think this comes from? Why do you think this is so pervasive?
It's hard to reach buyers. It's hard to engage them. It's hard to drive results. If it was easy and if it was a silver bullet, we'd all be using the same tools, doing the same thing, and then it'd be hard again. So cutting through
Yeah,
that noise is so important. And I think it's great to try new things, but I think it becomes very bloated very quickly.
I totally get that. Oh, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. And then you're trying things for the sake of trying things and you're not like, what's the core? And yeah, it is hard, right? So it's hard and it's, in a shiny happy SaaS salesperson, with a happy hour, with tickets to the Red Sox and you want to go hang out in the suite and they're like, man, this is cool. Hey, if they're this awesome at Fenway, maybe they're that much cooler when I buy their software. So there's a lot of not that that's the sole reason, but people can get me with stuff like that all the time. But yeah,
They're taking you to Fenway. I got to get on those email lists and invites.
well, this was a long time ago. I will confess Marketo did take me to Fenway a long time ago. Um, Even though I was Mr. Pardot and they didn't do the research, but that's on them?
Or they're making a very big bet.
Right? I didn't like migrate their people off then. I waited till later to do that.
Well,
Uh,
you bring up a good point too, because you take a program like that, like taking someone to Fenway or, a year ago would have been the Eras tour. And that can really cut through the noise and create more meaningful experiences. I think that's part of the trend that at least, we're seeing in terms of what does it take to cut through the noise of these complex sales cycles and these buying committees that can, you had a guest on recently talking about how complex you can have up to 50 people involved in a decision. How do you break through that? And I think it comes less to tech, but more to relationship? And are you providing value beyond the tech, beyond just what your services are offering, but the connection to others to helping them break through their own noise? And so if you take a program like, hey, let's all go to Fenway and watch the Sox and share a couple hot dogs, is that a better use of your funds than a competitive intel platform or something else where now with the rise of AI, you can do a lot of that really, really quickly, really cheaply, and really effectively, where you're getting even better data than you would from a large, heavy piece of software.
You actually raise a great point. I mean, by the way, though, those hot dogs are freaking expensive. It like, a buddy invited me to his suite one time, and I was like, "Well, you know what? The hot dogs ran out. Let me hook this guy up." He stocked it with beer and everything, so I'll just order some hot dogs. Like $200 later, 30 hot dogs got delivered, but it's like, "Damn, these things are mint gold here." But you raise a great point. Maybe these days, we get back to the human side, right? I mean, I keep trying to profess connect to market, like connect to your buyer, and maybe don't put the sass in the way. So maybe Marketo, shout out. Maybe you were doing things right, and you're getting free airtime now, at least, and versus, investing in some software that gives you data you may never use.
Exactly. I think that's spot on. And we've had to make some really tough choices because you do spend a lot to get these tech services up and running, to get these platforms delivering and integrated. You're investing your own resources, you're investing your operational resources, integration resources, your budget. And at the end of a year, when you haven't seen that result, it can be really tough to cut those losses. But something, I was in prep for our call today was looking at how our tech spend has changed. And of
Yeah.
course, we might find that we get back, but over the last year, we reduced our spend by 83%, which is a huge number. And some
Yeah,
of
it
it
is.
was really big, heavy pieces of technology, but others were smaller that we just weren't seeing enough value to justify even the small cost. And so when you start to look at things holistically, what value is it serving from an ROI perspective? Is it enabling processes that make the team more efficient? If it is, how much more efficient? If it's trying to drive revenue, has it truly helped us see a bottom line result?
Yeah.
Um, and so with that, we made a shift from having 25% of our budget allocated towards tech to 4%. And when
Wow.
you think about that number, imagine what else we're able to do to try to play with to drive different types of results and find those meaningful connections with our buyers.
Holy crap. Yeah. Like, on one hand, you're axing a lot of things, but on the other hand, wow, now we have so much budget already we're not even asking for more money here, already reallocated now to something else. Yeah.
We're taking that control and that ownership. And it's not to say that over time we won't layer tech back in, but really thinking about and taking that hard look as to what is most effective and how are you measuring success? Because we had a piece of technology that I loved. It was, fantastic. It was great at really helping us get programmatic ads out in front of our target audience. And
Okay.
when you look at who you're engaging and who you're getting eyeballs from, it can feel really exciting because it's effective in that way. But
Yeah.
then you take it one layer deeper and you say, were those eyeballs converting into pipeline and were they converting that pipeline into revenue? And so you can love the tech and you can even love pieces of the results, but you really need to challenge yourself for if I took those funds and allocated it elsewhere, maybe to other types of ads that are converting at a higher pace or competing more heavily on search, what else might you be missing out on by only focusing on the very high level, top level metrics?
Tell me more about that. So an app, but it was fun, or like, what did you enjoy about it that you eventually had to challenge?
It did what it said it was gonna do, got us
Got it.
right in front of the eyeballs of the audience that we were targeting and, could have an impact on what we would call influenced opportunities. But it wasn't generating anything net new, and it wasn't necessarily making the sales cycle significantly, shorter, which would have justified the cost.
Got it. So, that's really interesting because we're saying, hey, just because yeah, a lot of software doesn't do what they say they're going to do, right? And then they blame it on your implementation, which sometimes is true and sometimes isn't. But uh, but the fact that they were doing exactly what they said they were going to do, but that was not what you needed. That's not what your pipe needed. You needed the net gen, the new things, and she had to make that call. And that's a tough call. That's like a leadership call, but also one that's fixated on the goal, right? Wow.
I think that's really the key in looking at almost any spend that you have, right? And of course, you should always be trying and testing new things. You should be looking into the ideas that others are seeing success with. You should be following some of the trends, but then taking that time and saying, did this serve us in the way that we need it to? Yes or no. If the answer is no, being unafraid to say, let's try something different.
Now talk to me about the to try something different, right? So I gotta imagine once you go through the pain of axing so many things, which by the way is badass because you started this thing by saying, yeah, this stuff could be vaporware. You're not just saying things. You're not like on one hand saying, "Ooh, watch out for SaaS," and on the other hand, just like buying a ton of it and just having all that bloat. You literally got rid of so much of it. Talk to me about if someone were to approach you with, "Hey, I have this new thing that we could spend our newly freed up budget on." What kind of are you asking certain questions? Are they what kind of bar do they have to hit to make it back on the roster?
It's a great question, Casey. You're usually full of them.
Asking for a friend.
I think that the very first question I would ask is, what am I going to get from this? And I actually just had a conversation with someone providing demand gen via surveys. And usually I start these conversations pretty much anticipating that it's not going to work for us. We have a very
Yeah.
narrow target. So it really is a battle. I feel for anyone on the other end of the Zoom calls with me. But by the end of it, it was very clear that there was truly a tangible ROI that you could tie to they delivered on results or you get refunded. And I love that type of model. And I think that that's a way that others can uh, break through some of that noise is really quite literally putting their money where their mouth is to say, if you don't see the results that we show up front, you'll get your money back. And I don't think a
Wow.
lot of software vendors do that very
No.
often because they also have a lot of costs.
That's almost crazy
I know.
to
I
hear
know.
them say that. It's like they're daring you to not have results. And I guess the only other thing is they gotta make sure that they can deliver. I mean, sometimes I've seen this where it's then up to you to do your part, and you don't do your part, and then the whole thing doesn't flop. So, man, shout out to them for but I guess sometimes you gotta do that, you gotta put yourself okay, so what am I going to get for this? Does it like what other questions do you ask?
Of course, you got to ask about the a number of hours to see results as well. How long will it take?
Mm,
Because we're living in an environment that requires us to be agile. My favorite topic of agile marketing.
yeah,
It requires us to be thoughtful and innovative, but if you don't have a lot of resources at your disposal and it's gonna take a lot of those resources to be successful, it could be the best tech in the entire world. You're gonna get to the end of that and feel like you were sold something that never was gonna work for you in the first place. So if
yeah.
it requires that ongoing maintenance and it's even if it's showing some results, are those results worth the return on what you're putting into it, not just from a budget perspective, but a resource perspective?
Are there any categories of software that, are on your naughty list?
Yes. I don't like calling them out because 'cause they're great people, great companies, but
Not the vendor itself, but, like, the
yeah,
category?
I think and I said this earlier in the call, I think account-based marketing is a little bit hype when it comes to the vendors that you use because it's so reliant on such a cohesive strategy and really understanding the buying signals. Now, I think if you have a very, very wide target, they can work a lot better, but if you are in a narrowly focused, um, field, it's gonna be really difficult to show the results that's promised when you're finding a needle in a haystack, you kinda want a bigger haystack with more needles, for those types of programs to work, and that's not only true of account-based marketing, I think that's true of, other vendors that do rely on larger data sets or larger pools to pull from, but if you
Yeah.
have a very focused target, it's gonna be really hard for any of those vendors to show results.
Yeah, it's almost like some of these platforms need, like, a warning, like a California, "There's chemicals in this that may cause problems with you later on." They "Hey, if you don't have your strategy worked out, you're gonna have issues. This is not turnkey. This is not Calendly where you're just gonna click in, click, 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 and go for it. This is, hey, you need to know what you're going after." We kind that all the time with like podcasts. "Hey, we can get guests for you on the show." Cool. Who? They're like, "We can get your ICP on the show too." Great. Who's that? We're not really sure. Okay, cool.
And you actually just said the phrase that is another great question to ask in these conversations.
Yeah.
Who is your ICP?
Mm,
For us to ask those vendors of that, because if we don't fit that mold, that's going to be a clear red flag of this may not be for us. This may be vaporware to us. You hear other companies seeing a lot of success, but what about that company is the reason it drove success? I think you see that a lot. I think with ad platforms,
mm.
they will tell you if you don't spend enough, you're not going to see the right results. You need to spend a certain amount. So you can rule yourself out if you don't spend that amount of money.
Yes.
Other tech vendors should think of ways to rule other customers out because what happens is you'll get a customer like me who then becomes a detractor that's not worth it ultimately to your bottom line or the effectiveness of the business.
Yeah, I mean, there are lessons in that too, not getting, wrong fits, and I've done that recently. Um, Not too recently, but, like, I've definitely in recent painful memory have recalled, not an ICP, not a fit, but the world needs podcasts, right? And so then but then afterward, there's just all the challenge and the struggle and um whereas if you hold firm to that, but I love the idea of asking your vendor their ICP because that's a question, and you find out how's their marketing doing. Did they isolate? Hey, any business that sells to a customer is our ICP. Okay, cool. So that's a non-answer. So maybe you don't actually know who your ICP is, but they were to say, "Hey, we work. Our ICP are healthcare organizations in North America of such that," you'd be like, "Okay, I'm paying attention now." With narrow targets and this and that. Okay, all right, keep talking.
Exactly. If you know who their happiest customers are you
Yeah,
going to also be a happiest customer? And that could be ICP, that could be what level of resources other customers have that they put into
yeah.
these programs, and having that layer of understanding can help you go into the project to make it more successful or understand in a year I'm probably going to cut this. The other piece of
Yeah.
advice that I think can be really helpful is you can't always do this alone. You almost need an outside perspective to challenge the line items. And that can feel scary as a leader or an executive because you want to defend the investments that you've made. You want to defend the decisions that you've made. But, every quarter, every year at a minimum, really to having someone else come look at and question everything on those line items to know that you're working towards the same results is really helpful. You can't always do it alone. There's a lot that, even an advertising example I gave
Yeah.
earlier, where I was really happy with a lot of the results because they were doing exactly what they said they would. We had someone else come in, take a look at it, and say, I don't really think this is driving what you need it to," and that they were spot on. And I think that's been really helpful for us to have that perspective and challenge that we're able to be. That's where you don't just cut 83% of your tech spend like that. You do need a little bit of help.
For sure. For sure. But, like, let me backtrack. Do they really offer Eras Tours tickets, like, for real?
I do know someone that did that for their target customer base, and it worked very well for them, but,
Dang. Dang. I was gonna say, what SaaS platform do I have to buy today?
exactly.
Oh, man.
One that has a time machine, unfortunately, but, maybe Eras Part 2 next year or something like
Yeah.
that.
Maybe. Maybe. Man, okay, so what's the best way to get someone to challenge? I mean, is it like, every now and then getting a consultant in or every now and then internal review or what's the best way to beat up your own investments?
I think the first thing is you need someone that you're gonna trust and listen to and have the buy-in for it, and who that is, I think is gonna differ for everyone. It could just be honestly your work bestie that you know that there's a lot of trust in between there. Have them go through it with you. Of course, making sure that you're getting the right approvals and that you're, not sharing anything you shouldn't, but having someone that you trust and value, their thoughts and questions on is really critical. And I think sometimes it can be even more helpful if you have someone almost not even in your own function who really doesn't understand, so you're forced to explain it and really talk about, "Okay, here's how this ties back to the goals." Well, is that really the right goal? Or, you finding those folks in the business that you trust, can be very helpful, but also consultants, of course, because they also will know where maybe there's, you're shaving things you really shouldn't.
Yeah, especially a consultant who isn't incentivized to keep working with you because you have that particular platform,
Exactly,
or tool.
exactly.
It's interesting. I feel like the trusted bestie definitely comes first, but I've experimented a little bit with like bouncing ideas off of AI and more of the paid, expensive, or the higher level ones. And I just said like, "Can you beat this up? Can you challenge me on this?" I think actually Grok actually has one that argues with you, um, which I tried in front of my daughter, and I was talking about why every business should have a podcast, and the thing just straight up was like, "You're an idiot. You don't need it. Here's why." And I was like, "No, you're an idiot." And so we like, yeah, but I think it was fascinating because on another topic, I had it challenge me on some core values for the company, and it said, "Well, this particular one you don't need. You can kind of blend it into all these other parts." And by having it say that to me, I said, "No, no, actually, I want this one in there. Here's why." And I was almost explaining it to myself of like, "No, this needs to be in there. I know it doesn't have to be, but I want it there. And like it matters." And so, yeah, something about having someone challenge it in a non-threatening way, right? It's not like the next layer up challenging you like, "Hey, should you still work here? Why do you have this app?" This is a, like you said, trusted, like a trusted ally who can say, "Hmm." But not one that's gonna just tell you anything you need to hear, one who can actually tell you you're being an idiot.
Exactly, and I think you need that type of person in everything that we all do. But
Yeah,
I'm so glad that you brought up AI because that is, I think, such an important wave within the world, but of
yeah,
course within marketing as most trends do eventually make its way to marketing.
so much.
It it's a habit I'm even trying to create myself of start with AI, right? Start with the idea, start with the copy, start with the content, repurpose the content. I love what you said of, "Hey, beat me up over this. Let's challenge assumptions." Or I'm trying to, present this idea. Help me think through all the holes in it. Those there's so many great tools out there. I mean, I know Casey and I have even talked about things like day AI, where you now can't live
Yeah.
without it. And so it's what are those little things that make a big difference? And they're really not very expensive when, from the get-go, which can become a secret weapon that you're reinvesting in, versus getting rid of something altogether.
I love the idea of start with AI, almost like that's a book waiting to be written. But yeah, start with it. I found that sometimes it's that like you're a train and you're trying to get moving, you don't have the momentum and you're just like, this thing isn't quite there or whatnot, but then you just give a little bit of that to AI and it's like, here's like a sloppy first draft. You're like, it's not there, but I can work with this, you know?
100%. I mean, apply it to looking for tech solution, right? If you're
Yeah.
starting with AI, that can be where you start to find the solution that you're looking for. You could ask it to help you prep for the calls, what questions to ask, think through the holes, think through what's needed, ask it what their ICP is. Does it match what the rep says on the call? There's so many great possibilities that you could use with, the chat GPTs, the perplexities, the groks, all of those are great ways of making sure that you're making the most of the time that you're spending, looking into research and deciding what you're going to do with your spend. Ask it
Mm.
if you had an extra X amount of money for a marketing budget. Here's my ICP. Here's our core message. Here's where we're seeing success. What would you do with it? What does AI come up with to at least get you started down a path that might be different than what you and your team are thinking of?
Yeah, just give you some ideas and challenges. Yeah, I have found it interesting. It actually can help out with negotiation too, with the vendors. Um,
Where have you used that? I love it.
with a little software here and there. That ends in a, yeah, but what's interesting is, especially ones that grab from all over the place and maybe user reviews and other data points, understanding how much other people are paying, and then telling it the licenses you're looking at and what you've been told, and I've even told it like, "Hey, this person's from Chicago, they're kinda like hardcore negotiator. What are some good tactics?" And it gave me like 3 different options.
That is an amazingly perfect place to start the budget cutting exercise, right? What do you
Yeah.
have that you feel like you're maybe spending too much on? What is the right price point? Then how do you use, your AI chats of the world to help you negotiate that down? I kind of love that, putting in kind of the profile of the person you're negotiating with. What a great use case.
Yeah, yeah, and it worked too, and when it did, I was like, "Let's go."
Pays for the AI service.
Yeah, I don't think they're listening to pod, so I'm safe.
If they do, they'll I hope that they would say respect the game.
Respect, respect. Yeah, it's just having like a thinking partner, just to bounce things off of can really be it. But though I have definitely seen everyone just try to add AI to their platform, and hire Matthew McConaughey to run around because I'm pretty sure he doesn't even know what AI is. And Matt, if you're listening to this and you do, let me know. But otherwise, I'm just going to assume you don't. But yeah, but what's your take on like everyone adding it by name at least?
It's gotta be useful. That's the
Yeah,
biggest thing, and I think it's again, you go back to shiny new object.
yeah,
I think that this very much, can be a very helpful shiny new object, but really still questioning what's the value that you're getting out of it, and does it align with the way that you want to conduct your business? So, I mentioned earlier the idea of using, AI-driven outbound.
yeah,
What's great about it is you can, of course, create some really, amazing, flows, sequences, cadences in a way that's more personalized than ever before, that's much easier, but now everyone else can too.
yeah.
So how does all of that start coming together? How do you really break through the noise and making sure that you're not just spamming people with something that is shiny and new like AI? That you're really being thoughtful about the effectiveness of that strategy because eventually everyone's going to be doing the same thing because every tool is going to offer the same thing. So how does it differentiate and how does it continuously help you drive results?
What do you think? Do you see it working? Does that kind of outbound, you know?
I think it can work. I've definitely seen it work well for some companies, and again, it
Yeah.
comes down to if they have the right message and the right way of personalizing it to the right buyer, fantastic. Especially I think when you're trying to nurture someone and you're using their own engagement metrics to really target what you're sending them when.
Yeah.
Um, but you still gotta be careful because, you remember the days even with Mailchimp where you could just start messaging people all the time. Don't just spray and pray, really be targeted about, the message and creating a meaningful experience because I think relationships, especially in B2B SaaS, is going to be the biggest asset anyone has. And if you ruin that relationship with over spamming with AI driven content, but just over spamming, it doesn't even have to be AI driven, just over spamming with content in general, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah. I actually had one recently come in. I'm gonna read some of it to you, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it. So it was a spam email, and I'll tell you how I know in a second. Hello, Casey. I'm inviting you to join as a member of the. We'll leave that out because you don't get free advertising. Looks like you guys are creating some really authentic conversations for B2B companies right now. Well, thank you, sir. Yes, we are. We only accept a limited number of founders per city into the club, but I noticed you might align with what we're looking for. Oh, thank you. Blah, blah, blah. What you're doing in the marketing space with Ringmaster B2B podcasting, right? And then it's like our network, blah, blah, blah. Would you be open to jumping on a quick discovery call? And then there's a grayed out signature with Instagram, but no contact details. And then the classic PS, if this doesn't sound right for you, just let me know and I won't reach out again. But no unsubscribe, evildoers. What do you think? What do you think about that message?
Well, you should be very flattered because,
I
of
should.
course, you're really doing a great job in the space. And
Yes.
no, I mean, it's something that it has just the right level of personalization to make you think it's real, but it still sounds very generic. And
Yeah.
especially just, I think in the way that people reference the company,
Yes. That's
it's
it.
it's exactly what it is. It's pulling from something that their database said this is how the company is called, and this is like that's not how anyone would ever refer to Ringmaster.
Right. They just say ringmaster. They wouldn't say B2B podcasting or any of these other things that they say. So it's almost like you get them. And I've seen that before. Sometimes we put like ringmaster conversational marketing as like a little tagline, but it's definitely not the name of the company or anything
Right.
whatsoever. But somehow it ends up in there somewhere and you go, aha, you're busted, sir. Busted. And
I
then
see where you came from.
the signature, which is like, don't actually reply to me individually, reply to this catch all email that I definitely marked as spam and blocked, and it's probably in a throwaway domain. Is it? Maybe. No. Yeah, probably. Dash. Let's see. What is that domain? Is it like a yeah, dash friends. So it's like their actual domain, dash friends, so they can just chuck that domain when they're done with it. but it has the person's first and last name in their email. You're right. Customization, but I just misses maybe it's almost like just too much, you know?
Completely agree. And, I think even beyond just even the content of the emails, we've had companies where it's just very clear that they're uncoordinated, whether it's their AI chatbots are uncoordinated or, one team's using them, another team's not. It just, you start all of a sudden seeing so many different emails from so many different people. And that always makes, especially if you're trying to sell me marketing tech and you seem uncoordinated with your own marketing, that's massive red flags just on the field right there.
Oh, 100%. I love that though. You're trying to sell marketing tech and like your org has to be so polished, right? So that people are like, yeah, okay. I want to be like you when I grow up. It's funny. I had a buddy, his teenage son has grown what feels to both of us like a foot in a couple of weeks. And he's tripping over nothing, right? Because he hasn't learned the size of his legs yet, and it just feels like when you mention like an organization, it just this hand is doing something different, and they're like tripping over themselves. It felt like just a growing teenager that, and it's like, well, that's cool. Grow up, then reach out to me. Let me know when you're done.
Exactly. And I should mention that this is a company that does sell AI driven outbound.
Yeah, yeah, and then okay, yeah, and if they can't figure it out and they're not quite polished with it, then what is yours going? Yours is not going to be better than theirs.
Exactly. And I think that's always a really good indicator too of some of this stuff where it may just still be too new. Maybe they're still too much of a growing teenager. How many SMEs do they need to bring in to show you how it works is always a really good question because if they have 2 or 3 different people that specialize in exactly what that does, it raises a question that it's too complex for you to really get enough value out of.
That's a really good point. I mean, it's funny, like, you just have, like, zingers left and right, and even hours and minutes into this podcast, you still so how many people do they bring in, and how and I'm thinking back to Salesforce days, like, can your sales rep explain it? Can they answer your first question? And in some cases back in the day, the answer was no. And if we don't have the partner or the sales engineer on that call, like we are doomed. And you
Right.
could see it in some of the email messages of like, no, we need people on this thing. And that was good for me at the time, that's for sure, to be needed in the process. But yeah, that signaled correctly that Pardot and other marketing automation tools needed some education. It wasn't like go use your free trial and check it out.
Exactly. And it's goes even beyond, having a solution consultant or one SME, that's great. So when you start to bring in the second or the third or the fourth, that you start to say, okay, there's something else going on here if it can't be easily explained by the pros for the core platform.
Okay, see, that's interesting. I haven't experienced that. So tell me more. They literally are bringing in multiple experts just to explain how it's going to work.
Exactly.
How one see, I don't even understand. One couldn't answer other questions. Were they like specific to
Specific
particular?
to, like, these AI functionalities, especially where you're involving you could be using a technology for years and then working with a SME on and off, this has been our experience with a couple of vendors where you know who the SMEs are, you know who the solution consultants are that you get connected to and form those relationships with.
Yeah.
It's then, "Oh, we need someone to show you how this component works. Oh, we need someone else to show you how that component works."
Oh
And I've
wow.
seen a lot more of it with the AI functionality where all of a sudden you went from, "Okay, I worked with a rep and an SC or a SME. Now I'm working with 4 or 5 different people. How complex is this that you need that many people to be a part of the sales cycle?"
You know what? What a warning sign to and doesn't did you not get it or did you still get it?
No, no, we didn't get it.
You were just like, I'm out. We don't need the 12 dwarves to all explain this thing to us. Wow, what that would be an example of a company that should kinda get their thing squared away, right? The clunky teenager that doesn't quite all know the product. Wow. Versus someone saying, "Yeah, go on in there," or man, if sales can explain it and they don't even need someone to come in there,
Then you know it's intuitive.
either it's too easy and you should reproduce it yourself, or they've got something special.
Exactly. I'll give a shout out actually. The one company that I consistently hear from other B2B companies that they love absolutely love is Gong, and we just rolled that out. And I think that the sales process was a really good indicator of the type of company that we're working with because
Yeah.
I worked with one person the entire time, explaining every part of the functionality clearly, answering almost every complex question that I had. I think it showed not only the skill of that sales rep, who was very patient with me throughout the entire process, but just how great the tech is. And so far, we're about a month in, but really loving it. And again, it was also an example of where we were looking at our tech spend saying we're spending too much for a different vendor that's not giving us the results that we want to see or the adoption internally. What else is out there and what should we be moving towards?
Right. Dang. Um, Jeez. This is like a master class in like B2B SaaS software and how to buy it. Anything we haven't talked about? Any parting tips on that?
No, I mean, I think really just kind of the summary of leaning into your own agility, questioning, every line item and being hard on yourself too in, the nicest way possible. But is it really serving your organization, especially as we're all looking to be the most efficient and effective we can with the dollars that we spend?
Yeah,
And of course, lean into AI. It is really going to be the wave of the future, and finding those ways of starting with AI, playing with it, will also help guard against the shiny new object when you're shown it with different vendors themselves.
absolutely. Um, Man, I feel almost like I have a little bit more of an edge now when it comes to like negotiating or understanding or sorting through the shopping process because we have some tips, but really just holding yourself accountable. Powerful. Thank you so much for coming on here. I like, we had such a great first episode, and I thought, oh, I wonder what we'll talk about. And man, did you go all in? And there's some wounded sass all over the place, and then the good ones. See, the good sass would send people to this episode, right? If you're a SaaS vendor and you actually are worth your cost and you're going to deliver, send people this episode. All your competition will just fall into the dust, you know?
Agreed.
Dang. Well, thank you so much, Alyssa. You're the best. Appreciate you coming on here. Man, I learned a ton. We chatted about AI, we chatted about the programs, the questions you have to use to hold your team accountable, make sure. But man, kudos on the 83%. And thank you for being on here.
Thanks for having me. Always, always great chatting with you, Casey.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, literally ran out of space down below. Like, if you learned something, then share this with one person, 9 people, 3,000 people. Really, even one person's fine. That's thought leadership. Like, who needs to hear this? Is somebody drowning in their SaaS spend? Maybe they should open that thing up, or does somebody really need to get on the next Eras tour? Like, either way, just share this episode with someone else. Challenge yourself, challenge your budget, make it deliver what you need, not just what they say it's going to do. Powerful. Alyssa, you are the best.
Thanks for letting me smash some myths.
All right, everyone. This has been a crazy cool episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.